It was a late afternoon, the sun setting over the horizon, casting an orange glow over the dusty road that led into the small-town gas station. The hum of the pumps and the distant sound of motorcycles grew louder as a group of bikers rolled in, their engines roaring with a wild energy that echoed through the parking lot. The sound wasn't just a noise, it was a declaration. These were no ordinary bikers. They were a tight-knit group known for pushing limits and living life on their own terms. They wore their leather jackets like shields, their tattoos telling stories of rebellion and freedom. But that day, at that gas station, they would pick the wrong fight. Across the lot, a group of soldiers had just finished refueling their army-issued vehicles. The soldiers were different. Their expressions were calm, their movements deliberate. They didn't need to make noise to command respect. Their lives had been defined by discipline, by loyalty, by a sense of duty that ran deeper than any biker's need for freedom. They had seen the worst of humanity and had learned to stand firm no matter the storm. But even soldiers, no matter how strong, could only take so much. And today, the bikers would test their limits. The air grew tense as the bikers pulled up beside the soldiers, revving their engines, daring them to react. One of the bikers, a tall figure with a fierce glare, leaned against the gas pump, eyeing the soldiers with a look that said, "You're not from around here." The leader of the soldiers, a man with sharp eyes and a quiet confidence, glanced over at the bikers. He'd seen this before, men who thought they could intimidate others because of their size or their noise. But what the bikers didn't know was that this group of soldiers had seen battles far worse than any confrontation they could throw their way. The situation could have ended right there, with the soldiers ignoring the bikers and going about their business. But the biker leader, fueled by the need to prove something, strutted up to the group of soldiers. He made a snide comment about their vehicles, their uniforms, about how the soldiers were just puppets in a system they didn't understand. He didn't know it, but that was the line crossed. The soldiers didn't need to argue, didn't need to throw punches. They just needed to show their resolve, their strength. And in that moment, they did. One of the soldiers, a woman in her mid-20s with sharp features and a calm demeanor, stepped forward. She didn't say a word, but her eyes spoke volumes. She was used to facing threats head-on, but unlike the bikers, she knew how to fight with control, with purpose. Her posture alone was enough to silence the group. The biker leader, not expecting this kind of response, pushed further, trying to provoke the soldiers. But the woman soldier's response was simple. She took a step back, her hand resting lightly on her sidearm, a gesture that was more about warning than aggression. At that moment, the leader of the soldiers, a man in his late 30s with graying hair and a scar running down his cheek, approached. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. "You have no idea who you're messing with," he said, his voice calm but full of conviction. "We've faced enemies you can't even imagine. And you think you can intimidate us with noise and a few bikes?" The bikers, who'd been brimming with confidence moments ago, began to feel the shift. They realized they weren't facing the kind of people they usually did. These weren't regular civilians. These were men and women who had stood on battlefields, who had sacrificed, and who carried themselves with the quiet strength of those who had survived the worst. The tension hung in the air for a long moment before the biker leader, seeing the unspoken unity and discipline in the soldiers, finally backed down. The soldiers didn't need to throw a punch to win the fight they had already won the moment they stood their ground. The bikers slowly revved their engines, some casting looks of grudging respect, others still harboring that rebellious fire, but they knew when to walk away. As they drove off into the fading light, the soldiers remained calm, their backs turned to the scene as they finished refueling. But the silence that followed wasn't an uneasy one. It was a silence of confidence. The soldiers didn't need to boast. Their actions had already spoken for them. This moment, though small, encapsulated a deeper truth: strength doesn't always come from loudness or aggression. True strength comes from knowing when to stand firm, when to let your actions speak, and when to walk away. The bikers had learned that lesson the hard way, but in their defeat, they walked away with more than just bruised egos. They walked away with respect for a different kind of warrior. A warrior who didn't need to shout or prove a point, but who had the quiet assurance of someone who had been tested in ways they never would be. This story from the gas station might be one of many, but it's the kind of story that stays with you. It's the kind of story that reminds you that no matter what your background or your path in life, strength is something that comes from within. And sometimes, the wrong fight teaches you the most about who you really are.